Good morning, Facebook and YouTube world. Welcome to Tradeways Word Wednesday, where we break open God's Word and we apply its principles to our lives. Sometimes we get into things about finance here. Sometimes we get into things that are just everyday things. Today, we're going to get into something that kind of touches a little bit on both. It can touch on your work life specifically, but also on your home life. If you'll remember last week, for those of you who were able to join us or watch the recording of last week's Word Wednesday, we talked about Nehemiah and how he had this issue that he wanted to fix, where the building or the wall around Jerusalem had been destroyed and he wanted to repair it. But instead of just going straight to fixing the environment, he instead goes to fixing the relationship. He actually asks the Lord for forgiveness for him and for his people. And so he focuses on the relationship rather than the manifestation of the problem that resulted from the broken relationship. He says, let's fix the relationship. So we got to the root of the problem. Today, we're going to talk about something where we see a relationship between Nehemiah and his employer. All right, we're going to see how because of who Nehemiah was and because of how he presented himself, he actually is able to get some pretty big help from his employer. So if you're just now joining us today, welcome. Glad to have you on. I see a bunch of people jumping on. Go ahead and throw some love over in the comments section. Let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's Word Wednesday as well. So we're talking about Nehemiah. So the very first chapter of Nehemiah, it sounds like the opening of a movie. In fact, I think they should make a movie about him. They probably already have, but they should do a new one. And it just sets the stage for this epic journey where he's going to go and try to rebuild a city in the presence of his enemies. It's going to be pretty cool. But he focuses on the relationship first. That's what we talked about last week, about how he needs to fix the relationship between himself and God and between God and his people. So he asks for forgiveness first. He basically admits that they've strayed from him, and that is why the city is in ruins. So then he asks the Lord to help him fix the problem. So now the way he asks is he says, grant me mercy in the sight of this man. And the man he's talking about is his employer, the king. All right, so he's going to go to King Artaxerxes, and he's going to ask him for some help. But here's what happens is he first is just trying to serve the king. And here's what it says in chapter 2. It says, and it came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him. And I took up the wine and gave it unto the king. Now I had not been before time sad in his presence. So here's Nehemiah saying, I've never been sad in the presence of the king. But apparently he was sad now. Wherefore the king said unto me, why is thy countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was very sore afraid. So Nehemiah he has a reputation for not being a sad person, not being a Debbie Downer. He's a joyful person, and he serves well. Right now, I want you to think of what his position is. It told us in chapter 1 that he is the cupbearer, right? So he's the king's cupbearer, which means he has one of the most trusted positions in all the kingdom. It's not the greatest position, that's for sure, because basically his job is to put himself in harm's way for the king. He's supposed to take the king's cup, drink, make sure that it's not poisoned, give it to the king, so that the king can know that no one's trying to poison him. So basically, every day this man is risking his life for King Artaxerxes. What's interesting is that as this trusted position goes, it turns out that cupbearers often became trusted advisors as well. All right. So think about this. Like, if you trust the person with your life, you're probably going to trust them with everyday decisions as well. And so through everyday business, Nehemiah has built a relationship with his employer that is one of trust and is one of understanding. And it's one almost like a relationship, almost of friendship in some ways. I mean, how do we know this? Well, think about this. The king immediately recognizes something's wrong. So there's some kind of intimacy between these two individuals, and to the point where the king can look at Nehemiah and goes, "You're not on your game today. Like, what's wrong?" Much like a friend would be able to do for you, right? Someone who knows you really, really well. And so he says, "Why are you sad? You're not sick. This is something about like sadness of heart." And Nehemiah, not meaning to show this, says he was very sore afraid. Think about this. Like, it's as if he goes, "Ugh, was I showing it? Oops, didn't mean to." And he said unto the king, "Let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad when the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire?" So obviously he has such a close relationship with the king that he can almost, in a way, cop an attitude, if you think about it. I mean, he's like, "Why wouldn't I be sad? My dad's place is destroyed. The place of my forefathers absolutely lieth waste. Like, of course I'm sad." And so he can take almost that tone. Of course, it's still in a respectful manner. He's like, "Oh, let the king live forever." But it's like, why wouldn't I be sad? So he lays this problem out in front of the king, and here's what happens. "King said unto me, For what dost thou make request?" All right, so now the king's like, "All right, ask away. What do you need?" And what's so interesting is that here's Nehemiah, who's basically a servant. He works for the king. And now he has the king, the most powerful person in all the land, saying, "What do you need?" Now, this is a really powerful lesson in joyful servitude. Because when you are a joyful servant and you are helping others and you're pouring into them and you're giving them value in their life, maybe this is in the form of working for a boss, maybe this is the form of working a ministry or serving your family, right? Whatever position you find yourself in, husband, father, mom, wife, right? Coworker, friend, leader, follower, whatever it is that you are tasked in life to do, if you do it joyfully and with great honor like Nehemiah has, the people who you serve will sometimes find themselves desiring to reciprocate your service. Like the king does here. Make a request. What do you need? And it's a pretty incredible thing, right? Like, here's the king asking, "What do you need?" And here's what Nehemiah says he does. He immediately prays. So here he has this amazing opportunity. And the very first thing that he does is he humbles himself and he prays before the Lord. So he's got this servant's heart who's very obviously happy all the time because he's never before been sad in the presence of the king. I think that's interesting. It doesn't mean that he's never before been sad, but he's just never done that in the presence of the king. He does not allow the problems outside of his job to come and affect his job. He comes to his job with joy in his heart, even if he's got problems at home, right? And he does his work without grumbling. Psalm 45:7. Is that what? That's not the verse I was looking for. It's a proverb. There's a proverb somewhere. I can't remember where it is, but Proverbs tells us that we are supposed to serve without grumbling. No, that's not Proverbs. Where is that? That is Philippians. I think it's Philippians. Is it Philippians? I can't remember. I thought yes. Okay, Philippians 2:14. Do all things without grumbling or questioning. Okay, do all things without grumbling or questioning. What does that mean? Everything you do, don't be like, oh, why do I have to do this? Or, oh, this again. Why can't I be somewhere else? Why can't I do something else? Why can't I be with someone else? Why can't I go somewhere else? Why can't I do this or that or the other? Philippians is very clear about, like, we're supposed to not grumble. We're not supposed to question. And Nehemiah does this. He does things without grumbling or questioning. I mean, think about his job too. Like, when he tells the king, "Oh, king, live forever," he means it, because if the king's not living forever, there's a good chance Nehemiah's not living forever. Why? Because Nehemiah is the first line of defense when it comes to the king, right? Like, he's the one who takes the drink. And if he dies, if the king dies, it means Nehemiah's probably going to die too, right? So he could say that with earnestness of heart for sure. But here's Nehemiah doing things without grumbling, without questioning, serving with a joyful heart, and does so in such a way that his employer goes, something's wrong today. Like, you're not trying to show it, but there's sadness in your heart. What's wrong? And that concerns the king. But not does it only concern the king, but it causes the king to want to fix it for Nehemiah. So when Nehemiah says, oh, why wouldn't I be sad? I've got my father's cities are destroyed. That's when the king says, well, what do you need? And it's in that moment that the summation of what Nehemiah has done in serving the king for years, when all of a sudden there's like fruit of his labor, right? Not just he's got a roof over his head and a place to live and a place to eat and sleep and stuff. No, the true fruit of Nehemiah's labor is when the king says, what do you need, Nehemiah? All of a sudden, the way he has served pays off. That's a great way to think about it, I guess. So, I mean, it may have been for years too. I mean, think about this. So when you go to work, when you go to help other people, don't question why you have to do it. You have to do it because the Lord's got you doing it, right? Don't grumble about it. Don't do it and smile and then go home and complain about it, right? Like, do it with joyfulness and gladness in your heart, because if you do that, the Lord's going to reward you for that. Some way, somehow, I don't know how, but it could manifest similarly to what happened with Nehemiah, where all of a sudden the people you're serving may turn around and say, how can we serve you too? So that's the thought for today. I hope that was helpful for you guys. Joyfulness, gladness of heart. You should have that anytime you're serving anybody. This includes the employers, even the ones who put you in harm's way, right? Because that's how we're called to serve, right? And whatsoever we do it as unto the Lord. And if we'll do it as unto the Lord, then we should be doing it with gladness in our hearts. It should be something that seems fun to do, right? Even when it's hard, it should seem at least like we like doing it. And so I think because Nehemiah did that, he gets this huge opportunity from the king. And ultimately, which we'll see next week if we continue in Nehemiah, we'll see that he uses that opportunity to go and accomplish the thing that he wants most in his heart. So because he served with gladness, he has an opportunity to get the desires of his heart. What does Scripture say? It says, delight yourself in the sight of the Lord, and he will grant you the desires of your heart. So it's one of the things that we want to do. We want to make sure that we delight ourselves when we are serving others, because he tells us love God and love others. Those are the two greatest commandments. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for being on with me for Word Wednesday. Drop some comments in the comments section. Let me know what you think. And if you want to learn more about what the Bible can do for you, what it can do to you to change who you are and change the outcomes you have in life, it's one of the most practical books that has ever been written, probably the most practical. It's not just a book of religion. In fact, it's the most anti-religious document ever created, if you really understand it. And if you want to learn more how you can apply it to your life, check out our Word on Investing podcast. Go to tradeway.com/podcast-shows. That's tradeway.com/podcast-shows. It's completely free. Go subscribe. Check out some of the awesome episodes we have in there. We'll be dropping new episodes pretty soon. We've got some incredible guest speakers who come and interview with Pastor David Mitchell, the founder and CEO of Tradeway. He's the host of the Word on Investing podcast. You want to check it out. You want to see it. You want to subscribe to it. Go click on that. I'll put it in the comment section for you guys. Thanks for joining me for Word Wednesday. It was really fun having you. And we'll see you again next Wednesday for Word Wednesday. And then we'll see you guys in the market. Y'all take care.